Hey, peace, y'all. This is walking and talking with T Ben. But man, I wanted to talk about gangs, street culture, and Charleston White. So if you're not aware who Charleston White is, you can always Google and YouTube. You know how that works. Information is everywhere. But as a short summary, I'd say a community activist first, and an extreme hip hop and gang culture critic. And I first was introduced to who he was. Well, given that he's from Fort Worth, we have we know mutual people. We know mutual organizations. So of course, I see videos floating on your timeline, and that's how I was introduced to him. Doing community work. But he's always been controversial and funny and very entertaining. So when you look up, you'll definitely see a lot of controversy surrounding his name. And you'll also see, a whole bunch of being a snitch and things like that, right? So here's my take on it. And let me say this before I continue, because we always got to get a disclaimer for some odd reason. But no, I don't agree with 100% of what he says and does. Just as I don't think anybody, or I don't believe 100% of what anybody says or does. So don't ask me if I agree with that, or when he said this or when he did that. It doesn't really matter. I respect what he's doing, because I see the play and I see the strategy. In my opinion, that's how I see it. And I'll explain as I go more into depth about street culture and gangs, things like that. And look, I'm not coming off as somebody who knows everything about everything. My word ain't law, just in my opinion and my take from my perspective. So I will say that I believe that gang culture have pretty much created a Charleston White. You know what I'm saying? And this is why I say this. Had gangs, had street culture within our own community, had they been going across the tracks to victimize others or commit crimes against others outside of their own community, then perhaps you wouldn't have a person like a Charleston White who will utilize the police against you. And this is so we kind of give more insight. So he will agitate and irritate and disrespect gangs and rappers. That's really all he goes after. And then when they respond in their way, whether if they respond with a threat, then he'll call the police. And so you'll see a lot of him being a snitch. So the interesting part about that is, from my understanding, and for as long as I can remember, a snitch is somebody who is also committing a crime and tells to the police in order to get out of trouble or reduce their trouble. So Charleston White said he a law-abiding citizen. He don't commit crimes. And just because I say these outlandish things and I poke at the bear, and I do this on the internet, doesn't give you the right to threaten me. So, and if you're a law-abiding citizen, he's right. If you're not a law-abiding citizen, he's right. Now, as far as, think of it this way. Of course, that we can always find ways to take care of our own where we don't have to involve the police. I get it. If there's there might be drunk Leroy that walk up and down the street, just maybe cussing out everybody. But everybody know Leroy ain't gonna hurt nobody. He's just a drunk. Everybody know this. So they don't call the police on Leroy, right? But two brothers, they get into a fight. They want to handle their differences. And the community say, well, we'll let y'all fight. We're not gonna call the police. We'll let y'all fight. Nobody calls the police. They handle that. But what happens when somebody crosses the line and they kill somebody, or they rape somebody, right? Or they victimize somebody, an innocent person? Who do you call? How do you get rid of them? How do you get rid of them? How do you rehabilitate somebody like that? Now, if you decide that you want to take these into your own hand, and you, even if you know it's against the law, but in your mind and your heart, you're doing it for the betterment of the community, you do that, you still broke the law, which will turn you into a criminal in the eyes of the law, and then a fugitive if you don't turn yourself in. That's reality. Let's talk about reality. That's reality. That's what happens. Now, you don't have to like that, but that's what it is. So somebody as a law-abiding citizen says, hey, I can use my freedom of speech. I'm speaking out against gangs who kill each other, who victimize innocent people, who terrorize our communities. I don't do those things. I don't involve myself in those things. I'm speaking out against that as harshly as I want to. And because I'm speaking out about this and you don't like it, you don't have to like it. But when you threaten me, I'm going to utilize the law. Now, there's always solutions, right? A solution would be, well, damn, if we don't like the police, we don't deal with the police due to their history. Well, why don't we create our own law enforcement agencies in our own communities where we can utilize the law that says it's illegal to kill somebody or murder somebody, right? And then we create our own jail facilities to house people who commit these atrocious crimes against their own people. Where do you put them? Where do they go? Who do you give them to? Who rehabilitates them? Well, if we say we're going to do that ourselves, then yeah, we wouldn't have a reason to call the police, right? We are the police, or whatever you want to call it. We can put a different name on it. Peacekeepers or whatever, citizen watchers, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to, if you don't want to call it the police, and don't. But had we had that, then yeah, it would be no use to call the police when we already have our issues with the police, right? Now, as far as
distance 4 miles,
distance 4 miles,
duration 1 hour 14 minutes, 421 calories burned.
421 calories burned. Let's go. I don't know if y'all heard that, but so now if you look up, like I said, activist first. If you look up his resume, you can't deny that his work. He putting work down and still putting work down, and it's admirable in my opinion. Can't deny it. So coming from an activist standpoint, that's his way of trying to clean up our community, right? Controversy and all, that's his route. And myself being an activist, I understand certain strategies that you have to go, routes that you have to take. May not be a strategy for me, but I understand the strategy. So check this out. People don't want to call the police, right? We have that right if that's how we feel. But when people want to utilize the police for the betterment of their community, you can't be mad at that if there's no other alternative, unless you're just going to turn a blind eye. Oh yeah, I wanted to say this too. You know, if you involve as in a gang, right? Understanding that your enemy is usually another gang. And also, you know, it could be, let's say it's law enforcement as well. Those are like your general enemies. And so the victims, and it's not even about just the gangs. Let's say also just if you in the streets. And so the way you make money is usually dealing in illegal activities because you're in the streets. That's your form of, you know, supporting yourself. But now you have victims. Those victims are always going to be against you. They're always going to be against you. So if they're always going to be against you, you know that comes to the territory of just the life that you're in by choice or by circumstance. So that's the life you in. So they're gonna utilize law enforcement, the police, as their form of protection, right? Now, that goes across the board, whether they're in your community or outside your community. Now, had you only victimized each other and others who are involved in themselves, or others who involve themselves in the culture that you're in, you probably have a much lesser chance of somebody utilizing the police against you. Now, and there's another point I want to make. Why in the world does somebody who is not involved with the streets, not involved in criminal activity, why does who and who is not a snitch concern you? I'm just curious. I'm really curious about that. It seems like people want to take on being from the streets, but only like for social currency, and not even involved in street activities or gang activities. And I just think that's a dangerous, immature stance to take on things. Like we don't fool with such and such because they might be a snitch. But you're not even in the streets. You're not even in no gang. So why are you concerned with who's snitching? You know? But that's on one end. On the other end, if you're already involving yourself in these activities, then I just, from my perspective, you have to understand what comes with that. And people using a certain vernacular or dressing a certain way or saying certain things or evolving themselves with certain people don't necessarily mean they are from the streets. They can be associated to the streets, but that doesn't mean they're in the streets or in a gang. So it's amazing how we pay more attention to what somebody says versus what somebody does. But yeah, I wanted to add that little in. So yeah, that's my take. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to cover. Well, hiking now. Let me see. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. All right, peace, y'all. One more thing I was thinking. I wanted to make this point. For those who have a particular understanding that in order to reduce the crime in our communities, reduce gang activity, to even alleviate street culture amongst our own people, you have to get rid of institutionalized racism, systemic racism. You know, I understand that perspective. So I believe there are many pieces to our quote unquote liberation puzzle. And one piece that's needed is to alleviate those aspects of our conditions by electing certain officials to government and to politics to pretty much change the way that our society is ran, whether that's through capitalism, all these things, right, that people do to create more opportunities in our own communities so people don't feel the need to have to victimize their own, as bad as that is. That's one piece to the liberation puzzle. However, that piece to the liberation puzzle is a generational solution. It doesn't occur overnight. That takes years and years to come into fruition. Now, another piece to our liberation puzzle is those that say, hey, in order to get rid of these murderers that's on the streets right now, that's victimizing our own people, in order to get rid of that through raping our women in our communities, who are creating victims who have nothing to do with your situation. Innocent children, women, men get killed or victimized by being a casualty of y'all's war, or a casualty of the way that you conduct yourself in order to provide for yourself. In order to alleviate that today, right now, I'm not talking about theoretically if we have this, like I was saying earlier. Right now, they utilize the police. It is what it is. That is another solution to the liberation puzzle. That's another piece to the liberation puzzle, even if you would disagree with it, because at the end of the day, yeah, we have our issues with the police. We have our situation. We got problems, like Tupac said. Yeah, we got problems. But hey, would you rather a murderer or somebody that's breaking into the homes in your own community, raping the women, who then killed a baby that was hit by a stray bullet because of a gang war or some kind of street issue that's going on? Would you rather that person stay on the street versus be in jail? So you have somebody like, Charleston White, who said, I'm gonna call the police. Like I said before, as a law-abiding citizen, he can do that. There are others who say, well, I'm gonna try to provide opportunities for our community to find different ways to bring in income through other means that they may not be aware of, and they do that. And that's their piece to the liberation puzzle. But there are gonna be several pieces. And in the case, not to, beat on a dead horse or to sound redundant, like I was saying earlier, unless you have your own systems in place to house, to rehabilitate, and to quarrel the violence in our own communities, you pretty much have no choice amongst those who are law-abiding citizens. You leave them no choice, because nobody wants to see a known killer who is not protecting those in their own community who are not in a gang, who are not in the streets, who aren't providing that kind of protection or giving back in a certain way. Nobody wants to see them roaming the streets. So that's all the point that I wanted to make. So yeah, I think that's gonna be it, y'all. Peace.